problem is that people are trying to make an MMO in the same way that you made MMOs in 2000s. And like, I think the future of MMOs are going to be games like Monster Hunter. They're going to be games like Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, where they're multiplayer online games, but you don't need to constantly play with other people all of the time. I think that like MMOs should shift from everything requires a group and like that mindset to shared world that people can cooperate in or not. So I'm actually really excited to see what's going to happen with Monster Hunter Wilds, because I hope they're able to innovate that a bit farther.
Being amongst the most successful genres around the globe since the early 90s, MMORPGs are extremely popular even to this day and greatly cherished by millions of people. World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy XIV, RuneScape, Black Desert, Guild Wars 2, and many others across the internet are home to an insurmountable amount of players, despite the majority of them being extremely old in the world of gaming. But it is clear that the industry is shifting its focus in other directions. For the past 15 years that MOBAs, survival, battle royales, extraction and gacha titles started slowly but surely taking the spotlight, resulting in MMOs not only being less played in general due to the influx of games available, but also less appealing for both developers and especially publishers. Though, let's be honest here, the last part has been happening way before the current major hits were even a thing. Right after the explosive arrival and cosmic rise of WoW in the early 2000s, everyone was after it. For over an entire decade, literal hundreds of what the common folk call WoW clones were created, and that broad but very well-known term perfectly describes what they truly are. They are trend chasers, the outcome of companies seeing someone break the mold, surpassing every metric possible and perceiving such as an opportunity for short-term gain with minimal effort. This particular phenomenon is not exclusive to a specific game or even genre. It happened to Pokemon, Age of Empires, Call of Duty, Minecraft, League of Legends, Fortnite, and suffice to say that will keep happening in the future. Blizzard's most recognizable game was emulated by many because of its quality as well as the unparalleled gameplay experience it provided, which gave it the title of most played MMORPG of all time. All those companies were fighting for a piece of that massive pie. But that time is now gone, and despite brand new titles being released every so often, the crazy gold rush that peaked in the late 2000s is over, and with the slow decline of this once behemoth, fans of the genre now patiently but desperately wait for the next big MMO to arrive. However, things are not the same anymore. Right now, video games are becoming the most diverse, expansive and commonplace than ever before. Dozens of fresh new ideas become available to consumers every single day. We reach a time in history when we legitimately have access to virtually infinite amount of content, constantly growing, changing, experimenting, innovating. And just how trends are born or evolve from this continuous flow, so do the genres themselves. The truth is, traditional MMOs are simply not made anymore. They are ridiculously expensive, require way too many years to develop, and due to those factors, publishers that heavily invest on them and want profit force safe, reliable, and established design philosophies to maximize their chances of success. But we all know that in the end, all that comes from that are uninspired, unfinished, unoptimized, and lackluster products. Of course, there are some exceptions to that, but they confirm the rule rather than refuting it. The MMORPGs of today are not only vastly different from how they were built 20 years ago, but also way more diverse, with some of them being substantially different than the quote-unquote traditional formula, so different that they may be almost unrecognizable. With the reveal of Monster Hunter Wilds back in December, we learned that this specific entry is by far the most ambitious one in the series, hinting for a possible open world as well as the confirmation of an improved and more detailed set of ecosystems within it. And said ambition might imply enhancements to many features we commonly see in these titles. The franchise was already somewhat co-op focused, and therefore pretty social all things considered. Cooperation was highly encouraged in-game, and the community in general is surprisingly friendly and healthy. World took that even further by allowing a maximum of 16 players to interact with each other per gathering hub. If it ends up being true that fans will have a fully fledged open world to explore and that many gameplay elements will indeed be expanded upon, including social features, the potential of the game becoming an MMO does exist. So assuming that both parameters I just mentioned are accurate, then can Wilds eventually become one? Actually, here's an even better question. What exactly is an MMO? The acronym stands for Massively Multiplayer Online, which, taking it to the letter, makes it a rather vague categorization if we really think about it. We know when a game is online, we know when it has multiplayer, but what classifies one as massive? Is 1000 people per server massive? What about 500, 100, 2000 or 3000? Do they have to be all in one instance? How many servers can they have to fit the classification? Is there a limit? What's the precise number that determines if an online multiplayer title is also massive? The truth is, that number doesn't exist. There is no cap nor minimum. The population volume doesn't really matter even. What counts and what people want from them is how the game uses social features to cause human interaction and to what extent. Here's a good example. Genshin Impact, an extremely popular RPG gacha title ever since its debut in September 2020, played by over 60 million users every single month. Is it online? Yes. Does it have multiplayer? Yes. It even has a beautifully well-crafted open world. But is it an MMO? No. Why? Because Genshin does not work around its online features. Friends can certainly play with each other and even randoms can join your session if you so wish. But outside of that, the game itself heavily limits what you can do in a group. Not only you can have above 4 people in your lobby including yourself, the activities you can perform with them are also highly restricted. This title is very narrative focused, meaning that most of its content is around the numerous quests we unlock and complete throughout our journey. Quests where co-op is not allowed. This means that a major percentage of the entire game is locked for everyone the moment you enable multiplayer including the host, and as a result, despite having multiplayer, Genshin provides a very isolated experience by design. But we all know that. We are already expecting it to be isolating. Why? Because the game is advertised not as an MMO, but as a single-player RPG, and we can see that through trailers and gameplay footage. What MiHoYo promotes are the characters, the events, and the story, not co-op. So even though the game has the fundamental pillars of a massively multiplayer online title, it cannot be considered as one because those same pillars are not focused on. Now, here's a thought experiment. Imagine this. Let's say that we pick Genshin just the way it is at the moment, but we put 100 people on a single server. and you could interact with each other, play minigames, complete quests together, farm resources together, trade, see people roaming around the map doing random stuff. Imagine all of that. And then, I ask you, does Genshin sound like an MMO now? I bet it does. Even though it's just 100 people, mind you. You know why? Because that's the true core essence of a massively multiplayer online game. The first M is not about the amount of players, but rather the amount of content you can engage with others. And sometimes it's not even that. Just being able to see other players around you is enough for many people. The genre is all about socialization in its purest form. Monster Hunter World actually got decently close to that. If you entered a populated gathering hub, it really felt like MMO at times. A bunch of hunters drinking beer, showing off their fashion set, planning sieges, or just talking to each other. Man, that was great. But the moment you leave that room either for a quest or the village that you're located at the moment, that feeling crumbles instantly. And it's not because there's a loading screen in the middle, it's because everything else is empty. You're still only allowed to make a group of 4 players whenever you embark on a hunt, and as soon as you go to the village, poof, no people on site, all NPCs. The social elements of Monster Hunter, even in World, exists, but it's very segmented. And due to that abrupt and constant disconnect, the game doesn't provide that MMO experience people crave, but they know it's almost there. So, taking everything we just discussed into consideration, how close is Wilds from providing said experience? Here is when we encounter an issue though. Let's say for instance that all the parameters we used on the Genshin example are also applied to Wilds. We could see a bunch of people on each village, we could see them physically travel to their hunting areas, assuming the game is open world of course. You could find random players hunting something during your travels, and you could even aid others on the fly. That does sound very much like an MMO, but the issue here are the unplanned consequences of combining those social features on top of the Monster Hunter gameplay loop. Let me explain. In this franchise, a hunt is not only balanced around 1 to 4 people, it is also designed around that number. That is important, because allowing more players into the mix would for certain destabilize the experience Capcom wants players to have by utterly trivializing the entire fight. Think about it. These games already get pretty easy with just 4 hunters since the monster is taking damage from 4 different sources and it has to divide its attention between 4 separate entities. Adding more players would only emphasize those 2 factors and would do so exponentially. That is a problem because Monster Hunter as a whole is all about challenge. It's about the knight versus the beast, overcoming obstacles, surpassing struggles, becoming a better hunter. If we take that away, the entire game loses meaning. Defeating a monster is no longer an achievement, it's a grind, the bad kind of grind. And that kills motivation and the biggest appeal to the series. And that's the thing, hunts are the most relevant portion of the game. It's what we do 80% of the time and it's what we want to do 100% of the time. Taking that out of the social equation would put Wilds on the same level as the previous generation titles. So we either do the former and risk trivializing the game entirely, or we do the latter and contribute almost nothing towards making the game an MMO. I believe that the best course of action Capcom could take in order to add as much social engagement to the game as possible without affecting the overall hunting experience is the following. Let players interact at gathering hubs, the villages, out in the world, pretty much everywhere, with one singular restriction. If, for example, you go on the quest and later on you find people fighting a monster in the vicinity, you can observe them, you can interact with them via gestures and all that stuff, but if you're not on their group, you cannot interact with the monster in any way, nor the hunters attacking it. You can't deal damage, You can't give people items, heal them, buff them, distract a monster. If you're not part of the team, you are nothing more than a spectator. If there are slots available, you can request an invite, or they can just invite you first as well, and then you can help them with a quest. But outside of that, you are a ghost to everybody else around you. This is immersion breaking, it is true, but I think it is a necessary sacrifice to obtain the best of both worlds. And even then, I still think this is a pretty good outcome. Of course, it is very unlikely something of this magnitude is even considered by Capcom. But at the very least, it is food for thought for future titles. What do you guys think? Is this a decent solution in your eyes? Would you even want these changes in the first place? Let me know in the comments below. A huge thank you to my Patreon supporters for supporting the channel and the content I create. If you wanna join the ranks, you can do so for only $1 a month. The link will be in the description. Don't forget to leave your thoughts and opinions down below, join our Discord server, engage with the community, and I hope to see you all next time.